In the Writer's Chair, candid conversations about the writing life with Lana McAra and Vandella Publishing.
Welcome to In the Writer's Chair, where we pull up a chair and talk about writing craft, the writing life, and what is possible for writers right now. I'm your host, Lana McAra, and today I am delighted to welcome to the podcast Thomas Tillson. Thomas was born in 1951 with the worst case of facial deformity in Chicago history. From a young age, his life has been filled with surgery after surgery, 65 surgeries to correct the deformity. And Thomas has written his memoir, Facing Myself, A Life's Journey from Tragedy to Finding God's Love. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome, Thomas.
Good morning.
So tell us, what was it like growing up with your disability? What was your family life like?
Well, it was pretty rough, but I didn't really know I had a bad life back then because my parents kept me in the house a lot. I wasn't allowed to go outside because I've had so many surgeries, and they were afraid I was going to damage what the doctors had done to me. So they kept me mostly inside a lot. So that was my life, and I didn't know anything other than that. So until later on, when I got to about 7 years old, by that time I had probably 20 surgeries by then. By the time I was 7, and it was an interesting life from that point on.
That would have been such a financial strain for all those medical bills.
Well, here's the thing. When I was first born, the doctors that did the when I was born told my parents to let me die, and because of the facial disfiguration, I was born with almost no face. I had no nose. I had no jawbone from here to here. It was just nothing there. And so the doctors elected to ask my parents to let me, they would make me comfortable, but they would just let me die. And my dad said, no, under no circumstances would you do that. Do whatever you could to keep him alive, which is what they did. And for the first probably month or so, I had to be fed through a tube because there was a hole right here. There was no lips, no nothing. So they fed me through a tube, and until I got a little bit older, then they were able to start closing everything up. That was the first start of my what's going on through the massive amount of surgeries. When they did that, my one of the doctors at where I was born got my dad to talk to a reconstructive surgeon who was probably at that time in 1951 was the foremost surgeon in the U.S. He was based out of Chicago at Northwestern, and my dad talked to him, and he told my dad, "I will do everything for free, provided that you give me the opportunity to write articles on your son," because all the surgeries I had back then were all groundbreaking surgeries. And so I was like a guinea pig, I guess you could say. And so my dad says, okay. And so still had to pay for some of the hospitalization, but the massive amount of cost was already let loose by the doctor. So that was a relief for my dad, and his, insurance was able to cover most part of the rest of it.
And you were born in the same city with that doctor.
Yeah. He was a professor at Northwestern University, and he was the like I said, the foremost surgeon in the whole country. And he devoted his whole entire life to doing groundbreaking stuff and coming up with ways to help kids who were born with the massive amount of deformities. Some of them didn't make it, but I was fortunate enough to have him do all those surgeries. And I still had him up until the day I got married 51 years ago. He helped me and my wife go through some of the things we needed to understand about what caused it. At that time, they thought it was genetic. They still don't know why I was born with it, because there's nobody in my past ancestral background, nobody had it. So it was just unfortunate that I had it.
So they were concerned that your children would carry through to the children. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. It was the thought process of that was, yeah. So at the time when we were married and my wife and I decided we wanted to have kids, it was, do we want to go through that? So I set up a meeting with him, and my wife and I went into Northwestern because we were still living in the Chicago area back at that time. And we talked to him, and at that time they deduced it as maybe there was going to be a 10% chance I could pass it on to one of my children. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, well, let's take the risk. And we did. And I got 2 boys that are perfectly normal. I've got 4 grandkids from both my boys, and they're perfectly normal. So, the risk was, yeah.
What a blessing that you were able to go ahead, and something in you said, it's okay, we're going to do it.
Yeah, we, back then when they didn't have like ultrasounds, so we had no idea. We couldn't go in and look at the fetus ahead of time, and we just didn't know until our kids were born that they were okay.
Wow. So going back, you went to school.
Yeah.
And what happened there?
I going to the school. My mom walked me to kindergarten, and it was a Catholic school that I was attending, and they met with the head of the school, the principal, and they said they would take very good care of me while I was there. But the kids that went to that school all looked at me like, why is your face like that? And I would reply, why is your hair brown? There was no answer I could give them because I really didn't understand it at 5 years old yet, what was going on with me. So I always had to reply back to these kids, and they would always stare at me. They would, when I was called on during the classroom, a question, you had to stand up to give your answer next to your desk, and you would hear snickering, and you would hear, oh, Tommy's going to make a fool of himself again, or because I didn't know how to talk because of my not having lips. They closed everything up, but I had to go through a lot of speech therapy to learn how to talk. And at that time, it still wasn't, people didn't understand what I was saying. So, yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah, yeah. And so as you went through your life, you continued having surgery. When did you go to speech therapy?
Actually, it started like at first grade. And
Okay.
my mom would take me because we still lived in the city. My mom didn't drive, so we had to take the bus from where we lived to downtown Chicago, and and they had to go to Northwestern, and they had a speech um, program there, and learning how to pronounce your S's and pronounce your CH's, and I had to learn how to do that. With the not having the proper lips. Um, and that wouldn't come until later on when I had more surgeries that they were able to develop what you see today. So yeah, we went twice a week speech therapy, and it helped, but not until I really had the surgeries to correct my lips.
It must have been such a challenge to have to constantly deal with change because you're trying to learn how to do something and then they go have surgery and it's not the same anymore.
Yeah, yeah. They would hold like a glass plate in front of me with a feather on it, and to pronounce the T or pronounce the SH, you have to blow out your mouth and form your tongue around. Yeah, it was a big process to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I could see the challenge of it. Wow. I mean, that is just the simplest thing that
Yeah,
most
yeah.
everybody takes for granted would be really, really difficult. And you talk great. You talk
Well,
great now.
thank you.
Yeah.
74 years of it, so it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So growing up and then becoming a young adult, what would you say was your darkest moment?
My darkest moment was at the age of around 22. Before, yeah, let me digress a little bit. When I was 9, both my parents divorced, and so because my mom did some things that shouldn't have been done by a married woman, and so my dad got custody. I had to go to court with my dad, and I had to stand in front of a judge and tell the judge who I wanted to live with, which is not what a kid should have to go through. Um, so my dad, right after he got divorced, became an alcoholic, and he ended up not coming home from work. He stopped at a bar, and so I'm 9 years old. I got a brother and a sister. I ended up having to take care of my brother and sister. I ended up having to make meals for them for dinner until my dad decided to come home. Well, then he ended up getting married again to another lady who was an alcoholic. They both never came home from after. It was a mess. So I ended up taking care of my brother and sister until I was 16. And then my dad got divorced with the second wife and married a third wife who was very regimented in how to raise a family. So her way went, and I'm like, wait a minute, I took care of my brother and sister since I was 9. 7 years of taking care of my brother and sister. Now you're going to come in and tell me what I'm going to do. And so I kind of rebelled a little bit about that. But, we had one of these between me and my third stepmother. And I eventually got kicked out of the house at the age of 16, uh, homeless for a while. And I ended up sleeping with, at my friend's house or, something like that. And then a week later, they would say, okay, you can come back home. So that went on and on until about age 22. And at age 22, I got kicked out of the house permanently. Nowhere to go. I slept in my car for 9 months. And that took a toll. And I ended up having no lust for life anymore. And I ended up saying, I can't do this anymore. So I ended up plotting a way to commit suicide. Excuse me a minute. And I was going to take my car and go on the Eisenhower Expressway and drive it at 100 miles an hour into a bridge. And that would end it. It would be instantaneous. And nobody would know I did it on purpose. They would have thought, oh, it was just an accident. So on my way there, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm driving down the road and stopped at a stoplight. And when the light turned red, I stopped, and out of the back seat of my car, I heard this voice. I'm in the car all by myself, but this voice, it was either out of the back seat of my car or in my head, and said, stop, don't do this. I love you. I pulled off into a parking lot and sat there. I couldn't explain what went on, and I said, what the heck was that? And I prayed for like the first time in a long, long time. As I was praying, this peace fell over me. And it was February, and it was cold, and this peace just fell over me. And I kind of understood and knew that it was going to be okay. So I fell asleep in the car and woke up about 7 in the morning with a different attitude. And I can't explain it. But I really felt at that time God spoke to me and told me things were going to be okay. 4 months later, I met my wife. And we've been married 51 years. And we've got 2 healthy kids. It's a part of my life that was the darkest moment in my life. But then it was a blessing also because I didn't go through with it. And I ended up being okay. And never had to worry about what was going to happen to me ever again. And life was going to be okay.
So that is that reminds me of the Paul on the road to Damascus. All of a sudden, the light comes down, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, really. It's a funny thing. I can tell you a story about how I met my wife. My wife was on a bowling league at one of the local bowling alleys where we lived. She lived on one side of the town. I lived on the other side of the town. And I had at that time started actually wanting to become a pro bowler. So I spent half my paycheck bowling at the bowling alley. And one night on Friday night, I sat there and I'm watching this girl like having trouble. And so I'm like, okay, she went and bowled. She turned around and I went, and she didn't know me. I didn't know her. And she looked at me like, huh? And she came up to me and I said, hi, here, why don't you try doing this and this? And so she got better at what she was doing during bowling. I walked out of there without her name. So I made it a point to be there the following Friday. There was no place to sit in the bowling alley the following Friday. Every chair was taken except one. That was the one behind her. And so we got to talking. I finally got her name. She got my name. And I kind of asked her out for, if she wanted to go out to go see a movie or something. We did. And we went on a second date, and the second date I proposed.
Gosh.
And my wife said, no, I don't know you. I said, okay. So the third date, at the end of the date, on the third time, I proposed again, and she said no again. And I went, And I went up to her. I said, one day, you and I are going to be married. I promise you that. And she says, oh, we'll see. A couple of weeks later, she went on vacation for 2 weeks and came back and asked me, when I met her again, says, you know that question you've been asking? I said, yeah. Ask it again. I said, no. I was afraid. And she said, no, really, go ask it. I asked her to marry me again, and she said yes. And 9 months later, we got married. And we've been married 51 years.
Wow. What a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
There's some good times.
Yes, I've met your wife, and she's such a lovely person.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Very strong woman, too.
So you went through some transformation at some point that led you to see your situation differently. Would you like to share that with us? Accepting your challenge and your lot in.
What really, I guess, before my wife and I were married, during my high school, I got involved in music. And I asked my dad to buy me a guitar. And he relented, but he did, because his father was a musician, a big time musician in the Chicago area, played all the local nightclubs. And he was one of the big top headliners in the city, in the late 40s and early 50s. And so my dad bought me a guitar. And then I said, well, I have to get an amplifier. He said, what do you mean you need an amplifier? This is like around the time the Beatles were just getting started, getting known. He says, it doesn't work with an amplifier? No, you got to get an amplifier. So he got me an amplifier too. And I taught myself how to play. A couple years later, I spent so many hours, 6 hours a day playing, practicing, learning. And eventually, I met somebody in high school that was a drummer, and he had his brother who didn't know how to play guitar but wanted to. So I taught him how to play, and the three of us started a band together way back in high school. But we were no good, but we had fun. Eventually, we got better and better, and we started playing out. And we invited another friend of ours who was a lead singer, and the four of us played in the local areas like the VFW halls. And, we were too young to play in a bar yet. But we played in the VFW halls and stuff. And that's how I got started in music. And then the Vietnam era came, and our drummer got drafted into the Army. And so he left for a couple years and came back, and we got the band back together again. And we played for our first party was for Kmart, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with Kmart or not, but a Kmart Christmas party. And we played there. And out of that party, we got 4 or 5 more bookings. We played those bookings, and out of those parties, we got 2 or 3. And within a year, we were booked every weekend. So I got involved in playing music, and it just grew from there. And eventually, we became one of the top-rated garage rock bands in the Chicago area. We played like the 5-state area around like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio, Indiana. So got involved in that, which led me to start writing music, which is really what I love to do.
Wow, that is amazing. So you're
Because,
still writing music now? You're still doing
yeah,
it today?
oh yeah. Matter of fact, I just finished writing. Right, it's more contemporary Christian music now. But I just finished writing a song last week. Finished recording it, and I'm putting a movie together with it to put it out on Facebook. So as soon as I get that done, but I have my own YouTube channel um, that a lot of my stuff is out there. I put on, out there. So
Yeah, give us the address of your
yeah.
YouTube channel.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. If you just go on YouTube and search for Thomas Tillson, it'll go right there.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. This podcast shows up on YouTube as well. So if you're listening on YouTube, go over there. Find out Thomas
yeah.
Tillson. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's I think is really good. And some of them not. They're okay. You know, there was one song on there, a country song that my wife and I would get together and I would do something and she'd look at me like, did you just do that? Yeah, and I would go, I'm a peach. And she goes, and she'll reply right back, yeah, when you're not a jerk. And it got to be back and forth all the time. And we did that in front of my sister, and my sister says, there's a song there. Yeah, I guess there is. And I wrote a country song and put that on YouTube. It's called "I'm a Peach." It's more of a comedic style kind of song, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Real life does give us our best ideas, I
Oh
think.
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes, it does.
So let's move on to your memoir. What gave you the idea to write all of this down?
I really didn't start out to write a book. I because my kids were getting older, I wanted to kind of write a little journal and little things that happened to me during the course of my life, so that because I'm not going to be around forever, and I wanted my kids to know what I ended up having to go through in life. They don't understand. They didn't never understood what was going because I never talked about it. So I started writing in this journal, and my sister got wind of it and said, "You need to write a book." I said, "No, I don't want to write a book." She says, "You need to write a book." Okay. So I ended up not knowing what to do. I just, okay, how do I start? Well, I guess I'll do some outlines. Because I think that's how you write a book. And but it was, I just kind of wrote some ideas down, and it took my journal, and it says, okay, let's see if I can write a chapter. And I sat down and Microsoft Word and just started typing. And I knew how to type because I was a programmer. That's what I did for a living. So I did a lot of typing all day long. So it was not a problem. I just started writing, okay, what do I write about now? What interesting thing happened to me after this? And I would write notes and just do it that way. That's how I started. It took me quite a little bit of time to do it, but I got it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book too. The cover's great. I took a look at it over on Amazon. It's
Yeah.
called Facing Myself, a life's journey from tragedy to finding God's love. And go over there to YouTube. I'm sorry, Amazon, and look it up. Do you have a website, Thomas?
No, I don't. I had one, but it's gone by the wayside.
Okay. How would someone reach out to you if they wanted to connect with you?
They can email me at my email address, ttilson38@gmail.com, and they can get a hold of me that way. I hesitate to do it on Facebook because Facebook is just it's crazy. That social media platform is. I just never get stuff, from people who are trying to get a hold of me. So the best way to get a hold of me is through my email.
Okay, excellent. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that we connected. We met each other at the Royal Palm Literary Award conference or event, I guess. And I just happened to walk up in the lobby and saw you and your wife sitting there, and I sat down and we just had a little conversation. So, yeah, I'm really glad that we connected. So, would you have any final words you'd like to say before we sign off?
Well, like I said, I never just start out to write the book, and I'm really happy I did. It's a Christian faith book. It goes from my birth to my low end, and that story of my suicide attempt is in there, and what happens afterward. And the premise of the book really is no matter what you go through in life, God is there. And he will direct your path if you just listen and ask. It may not be in your time, but it will always be to your benefit. And the book is just, I had somebody come up to me one time crying, and why are you crying? Says, your book. I was about to turn my back on God. And reading your book, because I had so many things wrong with me, I didn't think God was listening. It said, but it doesn't even compare to what you went through. And this book, is beautiful. And I'm like, oh, that's why I wrote it. That's exactly why I wrote the book, to reach other people that are going through some difficulties and know that it's going to be okay. So.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I write as well, because we know that what we're putting out there in the world is touching lives.
Yes.
And it makes it worth every bit of struggle that we go through to make that happen. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And thank you for being with us today. Thanks for pulling up a chair with us. We'll see you next time.